We're here to solve this LITS puzzle by JinHoo Ahn that you also saw as solvables in inverse LITS. Just as in the inverse LITS, there are some 4-cell regions and 5-cell regions that are mostly specified for the starting points of these groups. In this case, in a LITS puzzle, we can never perform an O tetromino, so these P-shaped pentominoes will always have these stems used. In this space, we're going to be forming an L off of this V shape, and if I actually take this cell, notice I always will form an L right next to it, so this is an isolated L. It has to come through here. We're going to get like these cells can't be taken together, these can't be taken together, it actually isolates this. Notice if I take this cell through the shuriken off of an L, I will form this pattern, which is always an L, whether it's top or bottom. So there are some of these shapes as we work into the shurikens that are useful to say eliminate the cell. We now form another P pentomino. It takes this stem. If it took these cells and not this cell, it would form an L touching an L, so it takes this instead. I got to take one gap over here, so this is going to come up. This V pentomino here is actually easier at the start, but forms an L. That forms this T. That means this has to be an S. This has to connect into the T, but not as another T, as an L. If I take this cell near the shuriken, same thing as we saw down here, I would be forming this pattern, so another L near an L, so this is marked off. Here's a 2x2 square, so it never can take this, so we'll have to come over through this. These two, including these two, would form an L near an L, so I had to take this instead. That marks this in. There's this, that's the 2x2 we're dodging. Now in this pattern, if I don't take this cell, I never get out to 4 total, and if I start from this cell, I would close out at 2x2 square, so this is marked off, this is marked in. That looks like something we can really be using. We got some spaces up top we can't reach into, so all of these are actually unusable. This is unusable. We get these 6 will always require this middle. That cancels off this cell. Notice if I take this cell here, I'm going to form an L up top and an L down below, so this is not usable, so we have to form a T down here. Still forms an L up top, which puts in this I. We now can't reach into this cell for this top group, but we can do this. That means this whole top section is not usable. This cell can't be taken. We got one of 2 L's, but not the L that touches the other one. So this looks okay at the top. This is marked off for 2x2 rule. This is needed for connectivity. Notice that along the top of the grid, these are on their own, so they have to connect through this L. This top section is still all through its own, so it's got to come through this cell. It's got to connect through here. And then actually down here, this will take this, or at least this, so this still has to stay connected coming further down. And I'm seeing if there's sort of more constraint I can use around that right now. I think one thing for sure is that we're going to have some issues if we try to like have this L pattern, because we'll then have to connect through and form this L pattern. So I think for one meaning of connectivity, we'll have to come through this cell. Notice if I don't take this cell, then I form something like an S or a T, and I will mark off the cell, and then there's no connection at all. So not only do I take these two, I have to take this third one, and I think that's now going to be very key, because what that will now do is put a similar limitation on the shuriken as we saw elsewhere. If I start something near this cell, near this L, it's going to have to keep growing out and form another L. So instead, this is marked off, which means now in the lower left of the grid, this connection is only through one of these cells, which will always take at least these two. I can't reach anywhere over here. I can't come into here. And again, for the 2x2 rule, I can't come into here. So I have a P pentomino shape, got to take these two. That closes us off. For connectivity, this has to be an I. That means this has to be to the top. This now is a disconnected group unless it takes this cell, and this can't connect to the top unless it takes this cell. So we got an L. That means I can't have an L here. I can take this T, and I got to join this cell to get the whole group connected. So pretty interesting LITS puzzle. It's obviously driven by the shurikens in a different way as the inverse LITS, but an example through JinHoo's work of having these central theme elements pop out in different ways with T's and S's and L's, filling them in. So hopefully got signs for this video, and we'll see you again soon.